All right, welcome to today's video, guys. In this interview from the Sports Nutritionist podcast, we have Dr. Eric Helms, who's a Sports Nutrition Association Advisory Board member. He's the Chief Science Officer of 3DMJ. He is an author to the monthly applications in strength science, the Mass Research Review, and he is also a research fellow and works out of AUT Auckland University of Technology and the SPRINZ Sports Performance Research Institute of New Zealand. In this episode, we really focused on Eric's paper that he published back in 2019 towards a sustainable nutrition paradigm in physique sport, a narrative review. And this really highlights the need for a paradigm shift within physique competitors, primarily natural physique competitors, but physique competitors as it relates to nutrition. So through this, Eric talks about his history and what led him to this point and why he felt it was valid to publish this paper.
As far as me, I am just someone who really just fell in love with lifting. And it came at a very, important time in my life. I started as a personal trainer in 2005. I started lifting in 2004. And I did my first powerlifting meet in 2006 and my first natural bodybuilding season in 2007. And I think just my personality type is that I tend to go kind of all in on something that I enjoy. And I don't really know how to do things that I'm not passionate about. And honestly, that manifested as what kind of looked like laziness as a younger man, as a teenager, because I wasn't passionate about school. So that means I did what was necessary to get by. But I put my time and effort into things like video games or basketball or breakdancing. See, you already missed a key part of my bio, apparently.
I didn't know.
Why not? That's a key feature that we discuss on all of my podcasts. Mediocre pop locker in the late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah.
Eric also speaks about his first experiences in a bodybuilding show and what that rebound was like.
I decided to just make lifting everything, so it became a career. It became a way I expressed myself. I started to compete. And I found, my first bodybuilding season, I did pretty well, for a first timer. Like, I got into decent condition, but I gained nearly 50 pounds, so 22 kilos in 2 months after my show. And that's kind of on the extreme end of the post-contest rebound that you'll see in bodybuilders, but it's by no means a solitary story. And at the time, the way I was bodybuilding, it wasn't great for my marriage. It wasn't great for my sanity. I was probably diagnosable with an eating disorder after my show for a while. I was certainly engaging in binge eating regularly and feeling terrible about it and not knowing how to stop. And also realizing that I really wasn't alone, but at that time, nobody was talking about it. So one of the things that I wanted to do moving forward was I wanted to take a more evidence and science-based approach, but I realized that the science at that time was very much agnostic at the best to the mental side of it. The psychology of bodybuilding and the psychology of people's body image as it relates to the sport and people's relationship with food and the sustainability of the sport. I think there's a pretty high attrition rate. So the motivation for me to put this paper out was to say, like, hey, like this sport's awesome. And it also chews some people up and spits them out, maybe, so let's take an academic look at this and really figure out, like, what can we do so that the people who want to compete in the sport have the highest probability for getting all the benefits and the lowest probability from getting the downsides.
Eric then goes on to talk about what intuitive eating actually is, provide some framework around flexible and rigid restraint, and the differences between things like following a strict meal plan, or if it fits your macros, or flexible dieting and flexible restraint, and what the differences are between those and where that sits within his paper, as well as looking at the 3-factor eating questionnaire.
It's a funny thing how flexible dieting is kind of a shifting goalpost. Like if you came from a hardcore traditional bodybuilding background where it's like eat 6 foods, being given the flexibility to eat any food you want so long as it hits your macros is certainly a step in the right direction. And this is reflected in the difference between, like flexible and rigid restraint. However, there's been research done to show that rigid restraint and flexible restraint share a whole lot of variance, because we've seen people who take tracking macros to a rigid degree. So rigid and flexible restraint are mindsets. They are sub-factors of the restraint factor of the 3-factor eating questionnaire. And so it means it's actually about your perceptions and the way you view food and dieting and your relationship with food. Whether you view it black and white is really what it comes down to. And people definitely can view macro tracking in a black and white fashion. So moving from rigid bodybuilding approach to rigid macro tracking to then more flexible macro tracking to then realizing, man, I don't even want to flexibly track my macros for the next 6 years in the off season has been my personal journey. And it also is reflected in the literature, which has been very interesting to me, in that the idea of tracking all the time eventually becomes unpalatable to most people, or unsustainable is probably a more on point verbiage there. So what do we do about that? You know, and while it is not intuitive eating, because so you're eating to get hypertrophy in the off season, we can take the internally cue guided aspect of it and apply it. So what I was essentially trying to get people to do is I've created a system to help someone get back to using satiety and hunger to guide their food intake. Because one of the things you see when you are using an external cue, tracking macros as an example, to manipulate your food intake, is you lose touch with your awareness of your internal cues. And this has actually been objectively studied by having people, guess their heart rates. And basically how much internal awareness do you have of your body? How well do you quote unquote listen to your body? That can actually be a thing. And people who regulate their food purely by external things are worse at that. And I mean, if you ask most competitors, they go like, I don't think about hunger. That's an obstacle. It's something to fight against, not to consider. Yeah. And ironically, all the intuitive eating research is based around teaching people to relearn how to listen to these cues. And we find that while it is a weight neutral approach, it's not designed to help people lose weight. What it typically does is it arrests weight gain, which is a huge win in a society that has an expanding waistline. And it also results typically in better mental and sometimes better physical health.
He then talks about what it's like if you're a new coach and you're looking at taking on clients, or you have a particular client that comes up to you and they want you to coach them through a bodybuilding show, and the way that you should be really approaching it, especially in the context of the position that his team within 3DMJ are in with their allied health network that they have. So they actually have a physical therapist, they've got a dietitian, they've got a psychologist and a behavioral psychologist who are a part of their allied health team within the coaches of 3DMJ that they can refer to. So not a lot of new coaches may have the luxury of the brand recognition that 3DMJ have, as well as have that allied health network that they have at their disposal.
If you don't mind, I'm going to give it to them straight. You mentioned how 3DMJ, we're well known. We've got a waiting list. We have the luxury of being able to be selective with our clients and have all these processes. And these up and coming coaches, they are going to take anyone who comes to them because they need to pay the bills. I'm going to give it to you straight. All you coaches who are listening who may think that and go, right, well, once I'm actually financially stable, I'll do this stuff. But until then, I just got to get by. I've been there, I understand, but what's the alternative? You take someone on and you don't have a referral network who gets in a bad way, you do your best to help them, and something really bad goes on for them, and now you get a reputation for negligence at the beginning of your career. You're done, especially in the social media age, you're done. You're gonna have a Reddit thread about you. You're gonna have posts about you on social media. And now you're going to be trying to make it while trying to manage that. You won't be in a position where you have the financial means to protect yourself from that. And it'll always cost less to do it right from the start than it will to have to correct that when you're talking about someone's life. So yes, it is much easier to do this when you have an established business, but I would say that you can't afford not to do it if you want to have a career.
Yeah, you need to be, like with anything, start with the end in mind as well. The last thing that you want to be doing is moving the goalposts on your clients and prospective clients when you get to a point that you consider reasonable enough to do so.
Yeah, I mean, or even more so, like if someone wants to work with us and they want to do a prep and they've been lifting for a year, what we'll normally do is be like, hey, we'd love to help you do an off season, build some nutritional habits, and let's work towards a competition in the future. And if they're hell bent on doing a prep, then we think about it, because often they'll end up going somewhere else who probably won't take care of them. But do think about that. Like there's no barrier for entry for a local show. But would someone be better off? You know, that's the question. So, you know, when you have someone who has been working out for 16 weeks, has lost a bunch of weight, they did a transformation, and they want to extend it another 16 weeks and get on stage, you know, that's awesome. And you need to ask yourself, is this person going to go hire some other coach who is going to really wreck them? And should I therefore stay with them and do it the best way possible? Or do they have unrealistic expectations? Are they okay with knowing that they're going to look like a novice bodybuilder on stage? You know, so I think that's the conversation that needs to be had. But those are definitely our recommendations. We of course work with first-time competitors. We of course work with people who are even relatively new to the weight room, but we definitely don't recommend that they get on stage yet. Now, like I said, though, there's a conversation to be had if that's really is their goal.
Yeah.
But that's a coaching point too. If someone wants to compete in what is essentially a strength sport when they've only been lifting weights for 6 months, like that's a coaching point. This person it's a lot of passion that needs to be directed towards something that's a little more long-term if they want to be as successful as their passion indicates they probably want to be.
And then lastly, just as a bit of fun, we went over this exercise where I was seeing if I could actually recite what his like resume to date was and how accurate I was. I did leave out the fact that he was a breakdancer and pop locker, but I did get in there that he forgot about his tenure in the Air Force as well.
One thing that you omitted, but I included in my recollection, was that you were in the Air Force, correctly?
Oh yeah, you got that. So shortly after I stopped breakdancing and finished high school, I did an enlistment in the Air Force, which thank you, Uncle Sam, because that's the only way I could have afforded going to uni, because I didn't come from a family of means. Let's put it that way.